And Welcome Trophy Kids presented by Bad News Media. It is January 13th, and we have finally made it to our destination. Wild Card Weekend is upon us. We've made it through 18 long regular season weeks. I've enjoyed every moment of it, but we are now in crunch time. We got to hone in our skills, give the listeners some good bets. How are we doing today, good sir?
I'm great. I will officially be happy through this weekend and then through next weekend. But once it gets down to those conference finals where it's just those two games on Sunday, I start getting sad.
Yes.
So it's coming.
Very sad. Yep. I'm with you on that. I think before we jump into the games, just a quick little recap of the season as a whole. As Trophy Kids listeners, if you followed us on our future bets, you did quite well. A nice 3-1 record on the season. Only one to miss was those damn Cowboys and their win total. It did go over. We did short them once again, but we'll talk about them here in the playoffs. Panthers over, Raiders big time under, and the Eagles, your NFC Beast champions, doing quite well for ourselves on that side of things. But
Doing
any
very well.
thoughts about the season as whole, teams, anything before we hop into the playoffs?
No, nothing really. We underrated Dallas this year, and folks will probably underrate them again next year.
Yep, every year. Oh, it's just a cyclical thing. It's what we love to do here. I will give a shout out to Lovie Smith. What a great just F you on his way out of the building. God damn it, I love Lovie. He's a hard guy to hate.
He really is. He said, you know what? To hell with this team that disrespects me. I'm going to hook the team up that actually did kind of respect me. I'm going to hook them up with the first round pick, right? With the number one pick. That's just hilarious.
Yep, absolutely love it. Your Washington Commanders are in a tough spot. The more and more I watched that game, the more and more I felt for you because you're in that, I think, unfortunate dead zone where you're not bad enough to just be in the lottery for next year's just insane QB draft, but also not good enough to be like, oh, we are a perennial playoff team. You're in the dead zone. I do feel for you there.
Yeah, it's very frustrating. We're just floating along, just taking us wherever the current takes us. It sucks. Luckily, we'll get a new offensive coordinator in there, but Ron Rivera was just interviewed in how he wants to run a 2-to-1 run-to-pass offense in the year 2023. So I'm sure that's real attractive for some young, innovative offensive coordinators. Yeah, right. He'll probably bring in someone real old.
Well, maybe you'll actually be in the Caleb Williams sweepstakes next year with that philosophy. So, hey.
And if that happens, Ron will be gone.
Yes, this is very true. I mean, that's next year's draft class is looking mighty fine, much better than this year's, I would say. So that is the true number one pick. But Bears fans have been hilarious on social media because, man, did they not have a lot to look forward to this season. But the fact that they have the number one pick, a bajillion dollars in cap space to just go bananas with, they're going to have themselves an offseason.
They are, and I mean, I know it wouldn't be popular, and if I was a Bears fan, I would hate the thought of it. But if you're really thinking about being real smart here, I mean, trade Justin Fields, acquire Bryce Young, acquire draft capital. At the end of the day, I mean, I know your hearts are in it with Justin Fields, and you love him and everything, but I do not hate the idea.
I don't. It depends on the price. It's what's ever being offered out there in the market for him. I'm with you, and how far you would slide back.
Yeah,
I don't hate it. Because they have a full rebuild ahead of them. There is
well, in this scenario though, you're not sliding back because you're taking Bryce Young, but you're shipping Justin Fields.
I get what you're saying here.
It's hard to do because you watch Justin Fields just scamper all over the field, and as Chicago fans, I'm sure they love him with all their hearts.
Yeah,
but man, I mean, if you're building a team, that's an opportunity.
Yeah, the real problem is they haven't had a guy since like Cutler, arguably. So it's hard when you're like, oh, I think we finally have our guy at quarterback to be like, let's ship him off. But I do get the point. I am tired of all these media hacks coming out here talking about how Justin Fields isn't, a franchise guy. Like, come on. That team had nothing going for it this year, and he still balled out. Like, give me a break here.
Yeah, as a fan of a team that's been starving for quarterbacks we went through it last week. I would trade for Justin Fields so fast.
Yeah. Hey, how about Sam Howell? Looked half decent, took some opportunities there, and you're just sitting there just screaming to the heavens at Ron Rivera for why were we not competitive the week before? But hey, that's Ron Rivera for you.
It is frustrating, and of course he didn't know that we could have been out of the playoffs. So I mean, he might have thought we still had a shot there in that game. There, who knows? But yeah, Sam didn't look bad at all. I mean, for a 5th-round pick, he can move. He's got an arm. I don't hate going into next season with him competing for the job at least.
Yeah, might as well open up the competition. Like I said, I also don't hate tank for next year's draft class because there are some players in there that could be. I mean, Quentin Ewers, depending on how he pans out. Like I said, Caleb Williams, who I think. Oof, man, I know people are comparing him to Patrick Mahomes. I think we need to pump the brakes there, but man, is that guy. Caleb Williams does ball out, to say the least.
He is a stud, and he's a DC guy. Just saying.
This is true. This is very true. All right, let's talk about some playoff football here. First game on the board, Seahawks 49ers. Line set at 9.5, over under 42.5. The Seahawks are just happy to be here. They had the Lions do their dirty work for them last week. What a great game by Dan Campbell and the Lions crew. I'm glad to see them go into next season with a little upward momentum. I fear for what might happen to their OC because I do think he might get picked off this offseason, and that's troublesome for the Lions. But the Seahawks are glad to be in here. And they run into the 49ers, the juggernaut we did call out months ago when Jimmy was still starting quarterback. Like, hey, watch out for this team. This team could get rolling before Christian McCaffrey was even on the team. And now they are looking as a lot of people's favorites to come out of the NFC because they are a powerhouse. They're through 3 quarterbacks. Nothing has really changed. Still performing at a high level. The number's 9. I think we're probably going to be on the same page that 49ers win this game. So let's talk more from a betting perspective. Do you have a side on this? Do you think the Seahawks can hang in this? What are you thinking with this number?
It's tough. I mean, I think of their recent matchup in Seattle actually kind of was still in it in the 3rd quarter, and then there was a defensive touchdown, and that just kind of turned things completely over. But you got to also remember that was also in Seattle. Them going to San Fran here, I'm a little worried about it. I don't even know what's happening weather-wise in California anymore. I don't know. I get on Twitter, and it sounds like they're having like hurricanes. It sounds like they're hitting that state. So I don't know what the weather angle is going to be. But I think, especially if it's wet, it's definitely going to favor San Fran. So I think this is going to be kind of a boring first game to our playoff weekend. I think this is probably going to be a San Fran blowout.
Yeah, this is a tough one for the Seahawks because as I was going through it, I couldn't make an argument any matchup. I mean, they are giving up the 6th most yards per rushing attempt, so if the weather is shitty, and they'd face this team without McCaffrey. McCaffrey's now getting going. He understands the system. Kyle Shanahan is in his bag when it comes to calling plays offensively. What they do offensively from a run blocking standpoint is phenomenal. The Seahawks are also giving up the 4th most yak yards. Don't know if you guys know this, but the 49ers do a pretty decent job of picking up yards after the catch.
Yeah.
And I think the most concerning thing is the Seahawks cannot cover tight ends. They cannot cover short passes. Brock Purdy has absolutely loved Kittle. That's been a very profitable prop bet for me, and hopefully some of you listeners have hopped on there. I think he has 7 touchdowns since Brock Purdy started at QB. So Kittle's prop bets, I think, are something to look at there. But the thing that gives even most concern is even if the weather is mildly bad, the Seahawks do not get a lot of pressure. And for what you do want to do against young quarterbacks, it's been well documented. First playoff starts, they do tend to fare poorly in their first playoff starts. But Brock Purdy has shown that he completely understands his offense. He knows where to go with the ball. He gets there on time, unless you have to speed up his process. Seahawks are only creating pressure on about 20% of dropbacks. That's towards the bottom half of the league. They're 31st in blitz rate. So if you can't cover tight ends, you give up a ton of yak, you can't stop the run, and you don't generate a whole lot of pressure. I don't know how defensively you stop this 49ers team. And then we flip the ball. How the hell does the Seahawks do anything offensively against the 49ers defense that has just gotten better and better as the season goes on?
They can't.
Yeah, like this feels like a bad spot. Like, congratulations, you got there. I'm happy you did. Geno Smith's been a great story, but whew, man, is this a bad spot for the Seahawks?
Yeah.
Anything else on this game before we?
That's about it.
All right, cool. Chargers Jags. This is a fun game. This is a team with the Chargers a lot of people have been picking up on for potentially future betting, their odds to get to the championship because they have I think they're 20-1 right now in the market type of thing. The Jags have picked up offensively. Good feel-good story here. Staley's been a moron like he's always been, playing guys in a high-altitude game in Denver right before the season ends with nothing to lose or gain in that game. And, of course, Mike Williams gets hurt because Stanley doesn't know how to tie his left from his right. Line's 2.5, over under 47.5. This is a fun matchup. What do we kind of got here for the night slate on Saturday to round us out?
Yeah, you said it's a fun matchup. This might be the best matchup of the weekend, and I would have never guessed this. I mean, are you kidding me? Yeah, so I think it should be a good one. These teams played early in the season. Jacksonville actually kicked the shit out of the Chargers, but that Chargers team back then was mightily injured.
Yeah. I think that was Herbert's first game back, too, from the cartilage injury to the ribs.
That sounds right. Yeah, that does sound right. That timing there. Yeah. I don't take much from that game. I lean Chargers just based on the talent, but I get worried just that whole travel going all the way over to Jacksonville. It's it's tough to say. I hope that Staley can get away from insisting on. He's a fine player, but the amount of usage that Joshua Kelly gets, it's too much. You have Austin Ekeler. Give him the ball a million times.
Yep.
He refuses to do it. It drives me insane. I think if they do that, I like the Chargers. But if they don't do a good job of getting the ball, to just get it to Eckler's hands, get it to Keenan Allen, get it to the playmakers, that's where I get a little bit concerned because Doug Peterson's going to do that in Jacksonville. I think the coaching edge really goes to Jacksonville.
Yes.
So I think the Chargers are definitely the more talented team, but I actually kind of like Jacksonville on the spread, which is just wild to me.
Yeah, who thought we would have been saying that at the start of the season? But hey, Doug Peterson is a hell of a coach. I mean, the guy, it takes a little while for his offenses to going, but around this time, mainly if the QB can pick up the concepts, which Trevor Lawrence has done here towards the end of the season, things do start to get rolling, which I think leads at my point is I kind of expect some points here. The Jacksonville's defense started off the season strong and has been just going downhill every single week. And I could say the same thing about the Chargers. I mean, the Chargers are giving up the fourth most yards per completion at 11.9 yards per completion right now. Jags are behind them at 11.1. So, this is something where I think if the Chargers are smart here and they let Justin do his thing, they work a lot of play action, which the Jags have been susceptible on defense. Chargers are going to pick up some points. I did bet the Chargers team total on the game so far. But Jacksonville also has an opportunity here because Trevor Lawrence, the one thing he does do very well is when you blitz him and you can't get home, he does do a good job of distributing the ball. Right now, the Chargers are blitzing at the 8th highest rate, but they're generating only the 22nd most pressure per dropback. So that's a recipe for Trevor Lawrence here, especially towards the end of the season, now that he knows where to go with the ball. And he's kind of gotten Urban's disaster coaching out of his head, and Doug Peterson has picked up here. So I expect points. I don't think I'm going to do anything with the spread. I haven't made a move yet on the total. I did bet the Chargers team total. I may bet the Jags as well. But I think it's going to be a fun game, and I do think we can expect points in this one right off the bat.
Yeah.
Every one of these games, also, by the way, is a matchup from previous in the season. I don't know the last time that's happened in the playoffs. I probably should have looked that up, but as I was doing prep today, every one of these games is a previous matchup that we had seen earlier in the season, some twice because they're divisional matchups.
Yeah, a lot of them twice. Yeah.
A lot of data points out there. Dolphins Bills. I don't expect this one to be a long one because this game has dramatically changed with health news. The line's at 13.5 right now. Over under 43.5. Hamlin's gotten great news, so the Bills now that's gone from a tragedy to motivation. Where the Dolphins are facing sort of the opposite problem. Tua's not going to play. Teddy Bridgewater's dealing with a pinky issue on his throwing hand. Who knows if he's going to go. Thompson's got a MCL or some type of sprain injury there, so he's wobbling around. You've got injury concerns all around the Dolphins. Tyreek Hill was wobbling around last game. I don't see an angle here for Miami even to win this game. I don't even know if they can cover this game. It's a 13 number. I don't have to bet it, so I'm not going to bet it. I don't know what you're doing here, but this is a nothing burger.
Yeah, it's kind of a bummer. We have 2 games on Sunday where quarterback play is going to be not great, unfortunately. And in the playoffs, that's really where you want it. Miami, they were limping so badly at the end of the season, and then they just win that baseball score game against the Jets at the end. This team, they just don't have it, which is kind of a bummer because when they were on during the season, they were really fun to watch.
Yep.
I think they could come back next year and still, as long Tua's health is massive, obviously.
Yep.
But as long as he stays healthy, I think they'll be a fun team again next year. So I don't really have a play leaning Bills, but I can't do a 13.5 point spread. But I don't hate teasing the Bills somewhere somewhere on this board. That's something I would definitely look into.
I don't hate that. Also, I am kind of wondering. I mean, we'll talk about Lamar in Baltimore here, but all indications show Lamar's going to become a free agent this year. Miami's got Tua concerns. Might be worth, throwing the hat in the ring. I know you mentioned it earlier in the season.
I mentioned that.
Yep.
He would look good in Miami.
Very good.
Yeah. So I think it's something to pay attention to.
Yeah. Also, how dumb were those Mike McDonald might get fired if they don't make the playoffs talk? That was the dumbest thing I've ever heard. For Hardball from Michigan, that's who you're going to bring back to the league for him? Like, what are we doing here?
Yeah, that would be insane. I would immediately try to hire that guy in Washington.
He would be Jets OC in a minute and making Miami's life living hell because him and Saleh are like best buddies. Holy shit, would that be Miami's worst nightmare?
Yeah, it would go well. I mean, he brought like life to Miami.
Yeah.
Miami. Are you kidding me?
And you want to bring in Hardball, who last time he was in the league lasted about half a second. Sure, he brought the 49ers to the Super Bowl, but then after that entire thing blew up in his face, and he's been running a terrible Michigan system for years, finally punching through. Like, what are we doing here?
Yeah, you can't trust him.
Yeah,
no.
He's a college coach. His brother's the NFL coach. Keep it out of the family.
Yeah, John greater than Jim.
Yes, very true.
No doubt.
Yeah, that would be. Oh, man. All right. Giants-Vikings. The line's at 3. Over under 48.5. This game has some interesting games within the games, matchups within the matchups. Brian Daboll's a guy that I've been on the bandwagon for Coach of the Year. This is a guy we've talked about. I mean, if you're a listener of this podcast, you're probably like, would you shut the hell up about Brian Daboll? Because every week for the last couple of years I've been bringing it up. But the reason I'm bringing it up here is this is a matchup from a previous matchup, and one thing we have great data on is Daboll's offenses have vastly improved in their second appearance against the teams, which is concerning because we've seen the Vikings team kind of trail off. And then when we look at the Vikings here, this is a team a lot of people are calling fraudulent. We have said it's hard to win as many games as they had, but yeah, they're not as good as the record would show and can be definitely fraudulent at times if things start to go awry early. But what the Giants do defensively might work in the Vikings' favor offensively. What do you make of this game? What are you thinking here, and how you might be playing this?
It's a tough one because, the Vikings are a 13-win team. We've mentioned this 13-win team with a negative point differential. That is just, it's the craziest. I don't know how it's possible. My initial thought just looking at this, I find the total to be a little high. 48.5 it's kind of high to me. Yeah. I don't know. I just don't think this would be as maybe high scoring of a game as we might expect. And you said Daboll a lot of times when he sees these teams again. I saw it. We played this team back to back, and so yeah, I totally know what you mean there. And the Vikings it's been just like a roller coaster ride for this team. The way I kind of see this game going is I can see the Giants coming out early, going up, Vikings making a late comeback, probably sneaking out a win, but I don't know if they're going to cover. So I kind of lean Giants here to cover. I think the Vikings will probably win. And then they'll likely have to hit the road next week in the playoffs, and they'll get their L there for sure. So that's my lean here, but I could see the Giants winning this game.
Yeah, the problem, I've been sitting here looking at that money line all week, and the thing that is making me hesitant towards hitting that for the Giants is Don Martindale on the defense. He is maybe the most stubborn defensive coordinator I've ever seen in my life. It's why he didn't last, or why he got kicked out of Baltimore. The guy just loves to blitz and play no man behind it. All he does is blitz, the highest blitz rate in the NFL. And one thing that Kirk Cousins is pretty decent at is picking up blitzes in zone coverage. If you're not going to play man behind the blitz, Kirk Cousins splits versus man versus zone are pretty dramatic, especially within the Vikings offense. And that is the only thing that gives me hesitation about backing the Giants on the money line, is because we've seen this Vikings team week after week this year. Things go bad in the first half, but then I could see, like you said, the Giants get out to an early lead. Don doesn't adjust the defense. He stays ultra aggressive, and here come the Vikings again with a late surge to win the game, which is why I'm so hesitant with this money line.
Yeah, I agree. That's pretty much exactly the way that I see this game going. So I feel pretty good about the Giants on the spread, but I just, even though it's only 3, I don't feel good about that money line.
Yep.
The Vikings, they find ways to pull it off.
And they're at home, which we talk
Yep.
about week in and week out, how that is, home field advantage can sometimes be overrated in the NFL. Not in Minnesota. That is a legit home field advantage. That place is rocking and rolling every weekend. So, yeah, I'm with you. I feel like that game's going to be wild down to the minute. Probably not something if, you got something to do. First half's maybe a good idea. Run to the store, get your errands done, and then make sure you tune into the second half for fireworks. And mostly for the next game. The Ravens versus the Bengals. The line's at 9.5, over-under's 40.5. I don't think this is going to be a very exciting game, but there could be some interesting thing from a betting perspective. Reason we don't think this is going to be an interesting game is Lamar is, I don't know if it's official yet, but I would be shocked if he plays. It's why when this line came out, I hammered it at 5.5. I then watched that press conference on Tuesday, and I saw Hardball's body language and just the look of a defeated man talking about whether or not Lamar may or may not play. And I was like, there ain't a shot in hell he's playing. I hammered the line again at 6.5. We are now at 9.5. This is why, as gambling becomes more accessible, it pays to look early. I'm not saying fire the trigger always, because sometimes lines will move in your advantage. But when you see a 5.5 line open up for Ravens Bengals with the types of injuries that were looming, you got to take advantage of that. Now, we don't know who the starter's going to be. Could be Huntley. Could be another Brown showing from last week. And then you got the Bengals, who a lot of motivation, a lot of anger going towards the NFL right now, as we saw with the way they're doing. But the offense, they looked good last week only because they got the defense turned the ball over and gave them preferable field advantage. These are two teams that battle each other defensively generally. How do you see this game going?
So I watched pretty much all of last week's game, and the Bengals were clearly the better team, clearly the winners of the game. But you're right, they had a lot of things go their way, and Joe missed a lot.
Yeah,
Joe missed. I mean, he missed Tyler Boyd a couple times. So you got to hope and think that won't happen again. But then you got to remember about these Ravens, man. Not necessarily this team, just the Ravens in general. This is a team that in 2010 went up to Foxborough. Joe Flacco threw the ball 10 times, and they won 33-14. And they didn't have any defensive touchdown. It was just run the ball, run nonstop, and that's what they're going to try to do here against Cincy. I don't think they're going to do what they did in Foxborough. I don't think it's going to be a 33-14, anything like that. I don't think they're even going to win the game. I still do lean Bengals when it comes to the spread, but just don't forget the Ravens. Harbaugh, that coaching staff, they know how to win. They know how to win ugly, especially in the playoffs. They're going to do everything they can to just hang on to that ball for as long as they can. These teams are just two complete opposites. Bengals high flying, get the ball to the receivers, playmakers. Ravens more, time of possession, hand the ball off, give it to Dobbins, give it to Gus Bus. But I'm leaning Bengals, but I would not be surprised if the Ravens actually covered and surprised us a little bit.
Yep. That's why I think there could be some interest here is that because the number has gotten so high that while I do think the Bengals should win this game, there could be some interest here in the total. I don't hate throwing this in a teaser. I don't hate looking at some player props here. T. Higgins, though, one thing here is he's dealing with a hip pointer, which could hurt their explosiveness. Also, though, Joe Burrow has been absolute money from a betting perspective. In his last 23 starts, he is 19-4 against the spread, so he has been a powerhouse when it comes to making you some money. I don't hate the teasers. Like you said, the Ravens they're a tough team. They're a tough out. This defense, too, just the things they do defensively seem to always give Zach Taylor in this offense a little trouble. They have a couple wrinkles in there that throws them off. Same thing on the other side, even though we've said, or I've said time over time, Lou is probably my favorite defensive coordinator. He's absolutely lights out in the second half. So this could also be a low-scoring affair. Totals might be worth looking at here, seeing where this number goes, especially given the public will probably be coming in as it's the Sunday night game. They like to bet high points. They'll probably bet the Bengals. This number could move even more. So something to look out for there. All right, last game on the schedule because, of course, we have to have a Monday night game, which I absolutely hate as a Bucs fan. I hate having to wait all the way through this playoff weekend to go on Monday night because this could be utterly embarrassing for us or it could be exhilarating. I don't know. One thing I will say for sure is, could everybody shut up about the fact that Tom Brady's 7-0 against the Cowboys? I'm a big believer in do theory, and every time I hear that stat uttered, I want to punch the person in the media doing it. Stop saying it and throwing that into the atmosphere. But the number's 2.5. Cowboys are favored. The game is in Tampa. Over-under is 45.5. This game is interesting because I have a lot of feelings about it. Some positive, some negative. I don't love the Tampa Bay coaching staff and what they've been doing, but I think if they do the right things in this game, which I'll go more into here in a bit, I think this could be a very easy win for the Bucs. But the fact that I don't have a ton of faith in them doing the right things makes this game all that much more interesting. What are your initial thoughts as we look at this game and kind of the keys that you're making for this Monday night?
All right, so initial thoughts, I am also with you, and you should hate playing Monday because, I mean, even if you win, well, you're on a short week. That's kind of messed up. But anyways, and yeah, I agree with you. I'm also a big believer in the do theory, and unfortunately, like, everything do theory related is on like Dallas's side.
Yep.
Like, Dak is due to play well eventually. I don't know. Mike Parsons is due to find the quarterback, and Dallas is due to beat Tampa Bay.
Yeah.
So that's obviously very concerning. Now, you could also just say, well, do theory is it's a theory and it's completely made up. So, just use that to reinforce your feelings here. One thing I'm massively concerned about is, Tampa Bay's inability to run the football and, how important that is in the playoffs. Last year, wild card weekend, I think 5 out of the 6 winners, they all were leading and rushing. Now, obviously, it depends on what's going on in the game. If you're winning, you're going to rush more. But still, that concerns me a little bit. And then I think both, I don't really think there's too big of a coaching staff advantage or disadvantage. I mean, I do like Dan Quinn on Dallas, but I'm not really crazy about their coaching staff either. So what it comes down to is it's Brady. So I'll take Tom Brady in the wild card every single time he's in it. So I take Tampa Bay.
Yeah, this is a game that I hit at the 3.5 when it came out. I got that number. I've also thrown it in a couple teasers and teased it up. It's a prime candidate at 2.5 because you can tease it through the 3 and the 7 if you want to back the Bucs here. I think the things I struggle with, you're right. The rushing is a big concern. And the rushing is a big concern because the way we go about it makes us so incredibly predictable. Sure, we are passing the ball at a high rate, and people could look like, well, Tom Brady's got setting records in attempts and completions. And it's like, yeah, but we're only doing that on 2nd and 3rd down. We don't pass on 1st down. Every defense in the world knows, okay, Todd Bowles, a defensive-minded coach, is freaking out that we're passing the ball too much, so we're going to run the ball all the time on 1st down. We get stuffed, and then we get in these awkward 2nd and 3rd downs because we're not successful on 1st down. I would love us to mix in some play action here on 1st down and get this overly aggressive Cowboys defense to bite, because that is what they are. They're an overly aggressive defense at times. Right now, we're 21st in play action. What are we doing? Tom Brady has made a living off high play action rates and high motion rates, and we just, for whatever reason, don't seem to be doing that. Now, we've gotten some life the last couple of weeks. There's apparently been some internal meetings to change the offense, a.k.a. Tom Brady is deciding to take over things, I think, which concerns me because I do fear that this may be the last season I see him in a Tampa Bay jersey because I think without Bruce being the head coach, offensively, the brain power is quite lacking on the sidelines there. And we've seen the flare-ups of him wanting to go forward and Bowles denying him that, and Leftwich's game plan not always being on the same page as to what Brady wants to do. So we'll see. But I think there are certainly opportunities. I like that the Bucs offensive line is getting healthier. We're getting our tackles healthier, which will help with the Micah Parsons things, as well as Tom Brady has made a living off moving around the pocket and avoiding edge pressure. The problem he has always faced is internally, and Ryan Jensen is a big question mark, so let's see what we get there. And then defensively, we're healthier. I think people are shorting the Bucs defense a little too much right now. I think people are forgetting that this secondary hasn't all been together since week 5. We are getting healthier in the secondary. That helps. As well as we sort of match up because outside of CeeDee Lamb, who the hell is Dak throwing to? Like, what are we talking about here? So I'm not saying things are great. I have big concerns about the Bucs in general, but I think people are coming into this maybe with a misleading idea of what the Bucs could look like here. Now we flip the coin because I don't want to be completely biased. Man, do I feel like Dak is due. After the embarrassment he had last week, I mean, everything that could go wrong went wrong.
That was so bad. I couldn't believe, like, I guess they just underestimated it because we had a bunch of defensive starters that were out. And, I guess they underestimated, like, young, hungry players. But, I mean, on one, I don't know if you saw it, but 2 plays in a row, they did a quick out. And Kendall Fuller jumped it first. And, I mean, he had a pick six right in front of him. And he drops it. And the next play, I almost thought my TV glitched. It was the same play. But Kendall then grabs it and houses it. And I'm just like, what is Dak doing? What is Dallas doing? What's going on? Yeah, it was really ugly. They looked horrible.
Absolutely horrible. That was one of the wild. I don't know if I've ever seen in my life a drop pick six, and then on the immediate next play, the exact same play happens for a pick six, though, with the same players involved. That was incredible.
Kendall couldn't believe it. He was like, what's going on?
I couldn't believe it from my couch. I was like, what the hell is happening? Yeah, so that's interesting. I think the other part that the Cowboys can very much hurt us is if they are wise in using their slot wide receivers, because as it's been well documented, we have a hard time covering slots. If you can isolate Devin White on a guy and use some motion to get him into coverage, oh my God, dude. I mean, just 5-yard chunks all day long, and then that occasional outburst from the 5-yard route that turns into like 25 because he's just lost in space. But that would require some legitimate coaching, and Mike McCarthy's getting to that time of year where things get a little confusing up in the brain. A little too many brats have been eaten, a little too much cheese dip. Things are starting to ferment in the brain and cause a little gas reaction up there. So yeah, I do like the Bucs here. I think this is when things get dangerous for the Bucs. Now, I don't have grand illusions of like a Super Bowl run right now. Some things are going to really have to change for that. But this is where Tom Brady, if the rumors are true and the meetings that have been happening behind closed doors with the offense and how they're going to come out and attack this game, and that kind of jolt of energy we saw when it was like, oh yeah, Mike Evans is a really good deep threat. Let's start going to him a little bit more. Like those things start to click, and everybody's like, oh yeah, I forgot this is how we play offense. It makes him a scarier team in the NFC.
Yep, definitely does.
All right. Any other final thoughts? Anything you want to solidify bet-wise or anything else before we rock and roll out of here?
Nothing major. This is actually, in my opinion, this is a tough board. This is like one of the first wild card weekends where I'm like, that's a lock. I mean, maybe. Well, no. I honestly, I don't feel like anything's a lock.
Yeah, I like the 49ers. I haven't pulled the trigger there yet because, like we said in that breakdown, you can go back and listen to it. I have hard ways making heads or tails of how the Seahawks even compete. But then again, the 49ers are known to have a dud every once in a while. Also, one thing, I know this is crazy, but if I was the San Diego Chargers, and we mentioned it before, but I still do not understand this. I know you're in the playoffs. And I'm sure this is illegal, but fuck it, who cares? It's the NFL. They make up their own rules. How are you not having backdoor conversations with Sean Payton right now? Like, how are we not with Vic Fangio lined up to be his defensive coordinator, that defense and talent? You have Brandon Staley. Yes, I know you got to the playoffs, but you've been well underperforming the last 2 years. Lombardi's an absolute disaster. Like Sean Payton running that Chargers offense, Vic Fangio running this defense. Just the things you could do. Pay the penalty. I don't understand how this isn't happening behind closed doors.
Yeah, I would spend the first round pick, but then you also got to remember there's always that. The Saints are saying that they're not going to let Sean Payton walk or whatever. So
which would be wild.
Yeah, I don't know what's going to go on there. And Sean Payton, as we know, he's not afraid to make things ugly. So
no, he is not.
So it could get real ugly.
Yeah. Who is I forget the rumor. I saw some crazy rumor for the Broncos, and I was like, of course, that's the guy they're interviewing. I can't remember now. Great podcasting moment. But the offseason's going to be fantastic. I can't wait to see where some of this shakes out. But, yeah, there was somebody where it was Hardball. I was like, can you imagine Hardball and Russell Wilson having conversations together? That would be...
Not at all. Are you kidding me? Russell's going to ask him, to schedule a meeting on his iPad. Jim's going to say, what the fuck's an iPad? Oh, my God. That's not going to work.
The clip of Hardball and Winston and do you have a sex edition lives rent free in my head. The way Hardball interacts with people is just I don't know what's going on. Yeah. And him and Russell together would just be pure awkward comic gold.
Oh my gosh. Just them mic'd up. Oh. I don't know if it'd be so awkward. I don't even know if I could watch.
We would need the mid-season HBO to be at Denver next year. They're bad enough. I don't know if they can say no at this point.
Probably not. I know Washington's one of the 4 finalists for Hard Knocks.
Oh, my God. Ron Rivera. That's Ron Rivera's worst nightmare, having a camera follow him around all day. Like, you do literally nothing.
Oh, yeah, I know. They'd find out that Ron doesn't do a thing.
He's out there watering the plants when he's supposed to do, like, a team meeting or something.
Could totally see that.
Oh, my God. Going for strolls, bird watching around campus. It's like, hey, Ron, offense is meeting here soon. Do you want to be included?
We have film.
Yeah, no. I saw a blue bird over there the other day. Gonna go track that down. Nice cardinal.
Oh my goodness.
God. All right. Well, that'll do it. We will be back next week. And as always, peace.